maybe life, maybe the universe, is continually telling me, like, you need to be more present.
Welcome to the Council of Dudes podcast. I'm your host, Vinny Brusco. I am a father, a husband, the founder of Agora Social Club, a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a certified life coach, and a facilitator of the Council of Dudes men's group. This podcast is here to help you tap into and follow your golden thread, that feeling that pulls you forward to become the best version of yourself. If you're someone who's into personal development and self-help and is looking to live a life of more alignment, then this is the podcast for you. Subscribe to the channel, click the notification button, and follow along on the journey of the show.
Hey guys, this is Alex Neist, the founder of Hostage State. Check out the Council of Dudes podcast now.
And here we go.
So I don't have a formal introduction. I just dive right in. So we'll just get started. So my wife just turned 40, and for a gift, she got like a care package, and in the care package was mouth tape. Now it wasn't hostage tape. I'm gonna be honest with you, but it was mouth tape.
I'm sorry, I gotta leave. I gotta cut this. No.
How dare she? And the impact that it's had on her her sleeping. Is she does it every night. So now it's going to be, this is for her, not for you. So I've used hostage tape before. I'm a sound sleeper. I got to be honest with you. I sleep like a rock. But she's a teeth grinder. She's up. She's just not a very restful sleeper. And the mouth tape improved her sleep drastically. It will be mouth tape moving forward, no question. But it improved her sleep drastically. How did you divide that this was going to be something that was going to improve your life?
It's a pretty wild story. So I was running my first company. I'm an entrepreneur by trade, right? So the audience that we're speaking to, are they business people? Like, how technical can I get here?
Get as technical as you need to. They can figure it out on their own. It's mainly health and wellness, and it's about your journey and how you've got to where you are. What's pulled that thread in you that's through all the ups and downs and all the bullshit.
It's a council of dudes. Like
Council of Dudes.
Right? I love it. Okay, so I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and so in my first company that I started, I ran it for like 16 years. Okay. And, as you can see behind me, I've got a bunch of jerseys on my wall. I was an athlete my whole life. And so I went through that phase of you retire and then you move on to the next chapter in your life. And that was a big change for me. So I'd started this company and I ran that for a really long time. And it was through running that company that life suddenly hit you smack dab in the face. And I became a dad, became a husband, I became a business owner. All the things just happened to me. And I'd hit a rock bottom moment near the end of that time where I was snoring so bad, man, that it pushed my wife out of the bedroom. And so my wife and I slept in separate bedrooms for years. And I think out in the socials, they call this a sleep divorce. It's not a good thing. And you'd be surprised at how many people do this. Like, way more people sleep in separate bedrooms. And I've never believed it's a good thing. I don't think we should sleep in separate bedrooms. I think there's a lot of really good intimacy that gets created just by being near each other, and sleeping. Sometimes you cuddle, sometimes you don't. Like, the older you get, yes, we don't really cuddle. I'm 45. We've got 2 kids in high school, so we're not as cuddly as maybe we were when we were first dating. But still, just being near each other, I think, is important. And so I pushed her out of the bedroom. And we slept in separate bedrooms for just way too long. And so then there was a moment where I went, okay, what do I need to do to take extreme accountability? I love Jocko, and Jocko talks about this, right? Extreme accountability. And it was, how do I look at myself and take that extreme accountability? And I started with my sleep. And I went down this rabbit hole of trying to figure out how to sleep better and how to stop snoring. Because as a 45, at the time I was in my 40-ish, right? At all of us guys at that stage of our lives, we don't like to go to the doctor. right? We could just try to figure shit on our own, you know? And it's like, I got this. And it's ironic because I come from a medical family. My dad's a doctor. So I grew up in his office. And so I'm not like afraid of doctors, but I definitely have grown very skeptical of the medical community and just like the value that they like. Can I trust them? And I think that's across the board. I think there's a lot of us who just kind of feel that way about, can we really trust what they're saying? And so I just never went into the doctor. I never got a sleep study. And have just always been pretty confident in my ability to just kind of figure shit out. And so I discovered this book, Breath, by James Nestor. And there's an excerpt in this book where he talks about an experiment. They go to Stanford Medical Center and they wanted to see what would happen if they plug their nose for 10 days and only breathe out of their mouth. So they go to Stanford, they plug their nose, and over the course of these 10 days, they develop sleep apnea, they snort like crazy, and their blood oxygen like just plummeted through the floor. And then after those 10 days, they unplugged their nose, they mouth taped. And after one night, what do you think happened? Everything went away. All of it. They didn't snore anymore, their sleep apnea went away, and their blood oxygen like came up to normal levels. And me, being an athlete my whole life, I read that and I went, holy shit. You mean to tell me that it's as simple as just keeping my mouth shut? Because my coaches had never taught me this. And I think most people listening to this have all played sports at some point in their lives. And if you remember back, like, did your coaches teach you, hey guys, we should keep our mouth shut and only breathe through our nose? Like, very few of them did. Especially me. I was a football player. I was a grunt. So it just wasn't really something we did. Maybe if you were in track or cross country, like maybe they taught you that. But that blew me away and I couldn't believe it was that simple. And so then I went down that rabbit hole of like mouth tape. Like, okay, like, what do I get? Where do I get it? How do I use it? And at the time, mouth taping really wasn't what it is today. Obviously, like I've spent enough money on marketing that it is what it is because I'm the one that broke through the wall and said, I'm going to spend all this money on marketing. And now it's, fairly mainstream and becoming even more mainstream. That this isn't
now wives are getting it in a care package for their 40th birthday.
Exactly. Right. And wondering, hostage tape? Like, really? So at the time, then I just went on Amazon and bought like, micropore tape or paper tape or whatever it was. I mean, there's plenty of tapes you can get. You could try it. It doesn't mean they're going to work great or feel good. So I get this tape, and before I put it on at night, the first night, this like vision went through my head that everybody has. Everybody has that. Wait a minute. What happens if my nose gets stuffy? Am I gonna die? Like, that's a perfectly normal reaction that everybody has. And so I had that, but then I'm like, no, wait, I'll be fine. Like, seriously, these guys did this experiment. We're supposed to breathe through our nose. I'll be fine. So I put this on, and I practiced a few different times of like, should I put it on like this, all the way across, all that? And I put it on all the way across because, at least for me at the time, I'm like, if I just put a little strip on, I could just pop it right off. How do I know it's going to stay on? So I put a whole strip on all the way, and I lay down and I'm looking up at the ceiling and kind of thinking, okay, here we go. And I fell asleep. And then when I woke up the next day, man, I couldn't believe how I felt. I felt like I had discovered that Konami cheat code when we were younger playing Nintendo, up, down, left, right, BA start. It was like I discovered this, holy shit, I can't believe how I feel. And it was in that moment that I knew my life was going to be different from then on. And the entrepreneur in me went, okay, there's an opportunity here to build something that I could inspire other men to change their lives too, right? Because let's be honest, nobody's inspired to go buy 3M micropore tape down at Walgreens. It's just not interesting. Like, nobody does that. And so I knew that if I could take this concept, this idea, and create a really interesting brand around it that could get your attention, and then tell this story of what had happened to me and how I discovered it, not knowing just yet what else would unfold now, that and how it changed my life even more with my wife, my relationship. My wife and I, we sleep in the same bed again, and what we built and how many hundreds of thousands of people's lives we changed. It's amazing. And so that was the genesis of Hostage Tape. And so then the next question you're probably wondering, that most people are wondering, is why the hell would you call it Hostage Tape? Like, of all things, why would you call it that? You should fire your marketing department. So at the time, I was really into Liquid Death. I mean, I still am. I love Liquid Death.
Yeah.
And I love what they did. They took the biggest commodity on the planet and said, we're going to take this, we're going to give it a really crazy polarizing brand and a name, and they sell the crap out of it. You see it in Walmart, you see it in Target, you see it everywhere, right? One of the biggest, fastest beverage brands out there. And so I was inspired by that concept of creating a brand. I'd never built a brand before. I built a business, but I never actually really built a brand. And so I kept thinking to myself, like, okay, is there a business here in selling tape? Because tape is really just a commodity. You can get tape anywhere. You can find Scotch tape in your drawer. You can get duct tape in the garage. A lot of people make the duct tape jokes, like, why wouldn't I just use duct tape, right? So I thought, is there really anything here? But then I realized, well, of course there is, because if brands like Liquid Death are doing it, brands like Native Deodorant are doing it, it was this idea of like, all right, walk down the aisles at Target and look on the wall, in the aisle. And if you see like a wall of white in a category, there's an opportunity there. And so, granted, mouth tape really wasn't a category yet.
Right.
But it was tapping into a problem. One of the biggest problems that everybody probably runs into at some point in their life is, how do I sleep better? We all have to sleep. We sleep a third of our lives. And as it turns out, 25 to 50% of the population probably breathes through their mouth because of what we've been doing to ourselves over the last 30 years. And as it relates to what we've been eating or not eating, and breastfeeding, not breastfeeding, like all sorts of things that have changed how we've kind of evolved and how our body is formed, that then causes us to mouth breathe more than we should be. And so realizing that the TAM is there's a big enough market, there's something here, and nobody else had done it. And it's also one of the things where most people are afraid to start a business, take the leap. And you'd also look and you go, well, why has nobody else done it? There's got to be a reason. And sometimes that's the best time to do it, is maybe nobody's done it because nobody's seen the opportunity just yet and found the right way to pull the trigger on it and execute it. And so I knew that creating a brand, a polarizing brand like Hostage Tape, was it. Because so at the time, my wife and I we were separated. And so when the kids would come over to my place, I would warn them and I would say, hey kids, if you bust into the room and you see me sleeping, it's going to look like I'm being held hostage. So just don't freak out. It's just, I'm wearing mouth tape. Because when you see somebody wearing mouth tape for the first time, it's really weird.
It is really weird. It's like it looks like it kind of deep in between their lips. It kind of looks like a clown lips kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of disturbing.
It's very disturbing, especially for like, imagine, I think at the time my kids would have been 7, 8, 9 years old or whatever. Imagine them running into the room, dead, like, whoa, So I warned them about it, but then I realized, well, wait a minute. Yes, you do kind of look like a hostage when you're wearing tape on your mouth, but the flip side of it is we're actually tapping into this core emotion people feel. People feel held hostage by poor sleep of their partner, and they don't know what to do. So don't let bad sleep hold you hostage. That became the brand, the idea, the emotion that we tapped into. And then we knew that, look, the core demographic of people we're going after was guys like us, middle-aged guys who have a wife, have a family. Because at this age, this is when we really start to not sleep very well. We're snoring. Our wives are fed up with us, sleeping in separate bedrooms. This is just the age that really starts to become exaggerated, and it happens to a lot of people. And so I wanted to make a brand that really spoke to men. So I made it rugged. I made it masculine on purpose, very polarizing, sort of almost military-like in many ways with the font. And I just went after that 30 to 50-year-old guy. And also knowing, too, that facial hair was going to be a problem. And that was going to be a question. It's like, well, what if I've got facial hair? And, so I then spent about 6 months trying to make the perfect product that could check enough boxes for that guy that would make them want to buy this. So number one, you've got the story that inspires them, this real story from a real person, right? And then also find product market fit with something that solves a couple of key problems. One being, oh, wow, this is actually really comfortable, right? It doesn't feel super uncomfortable. Like paper tape and plastic tape and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it can kind of work, but it feels really uncomfortable. And if I'm going to sleep with this on my mouth every night, I'd like it to be comfortable and still work. So we checked that box. We also checked this box of it works really well for most facial hair. Now, you're on that borderline of like where it starts to get really difficult.
Yeah.
When you've got so much hair, it gets harder and harder to definitely work.
Like lift up the mustache and do RBs.
Right. Yeah. So like there's definitely guys like you where we have to try to say, okay, if you've got some skin here around your lips, get it on there and then, rub it in, make sure it sticks. And then when you pull it off, yeah, it might pull a little bit. It's hair and adhesive, but there's plenty of ways to pull it off in a way that isn't too bad. You can use some water, some beard oil, like other ways to do it, but it works great for most of the population that has a scruff to a decent like beard or mustache, right? Yes, there's some people who it doesn't work great for, but for most of the people it does. And lastly, it looks kind of badass, right? I know that sounds kind of funny, but a black piece of tape, that's on your mouth looks a hell of a lot better than like this white piece of, plastic skin tape you buy at the grocery store. So, and you feel like you're a part of something. Right, you're a part of this movement, this group, this cool company with all these other people who are changing their lives. So,
If you build, he will come.
The point is, don't lose your dinosaur.
So you get the idea, and this comes to you in this wave of like, there's something here. Obviously, you're going to have that internal narrative that's going to say like, are you crazy? This is odd.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And then echoing that is probably the people around you, potentially the, friends, family, whatever it is, how do you navigate that internal dialogue when this idea comes to you that seems to really resonate with you? Because, these ideas come in waves and then all of a sudden you don't do it and someone else does. You're like, son of a bitch, that was my idea, right? The old, I thought of that 5 years ago. So how do you navigate that internal dialogue when you start to hear that doubt and the world is echoing the doubt as well?
Yeah. Well, look, I had everything against me. Number one, mouth tape. There's not that many people you're going to find and run into that are like, mouth tape? That sounds like a phenomenal idea. Most people at the time are like, that sounds like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, that sounds completely stupid. Because then you do research and you could easily find plenty of doctors who say, mouth tape is dumb, you shouldn't do it. Of course, right? If you're looking for it, you're going to find it, right? And secondly, calling it hostage tape was like, that sounds even stupider. So plenty of reasons for most people to give up and not follow through with this. And so it took a lot of, I was very afraid at first to even do it because I was worried that did I even have a defensible business? Because I'm selling tape. Right? I couldn't patent anything. Like there's elements to the brand that are trademarked that people can't obviously replicate and do. Like in fact, one of the things that we did very early on is that we did get a trademark on was like this shape of the tape. Like we're the only people who can legally do it. Nobody else can do it legally. So I can go after anybody that is using this shape and color because I own it.
Did you have previous shapes in mind that you were testing and you found to that be like the best one for the mouth? Yeah.
Well, we did. So in fact here, so if you see here, this is the very first sample that when I pulled it out, it looked like this. Okay. It kind of looks like some pouty lips. And the other one is this is the first iteration of like the nose strip. So I took I'm obviously wearing it, but the second product we made was a nose strip. And so I took our mouth tape and I cut it to try to like create a nose strip. So this is the first one of each of them that I ever made. And the funny thing about that shape was when I got it, you kind of looked at it and you went, well, which side is the top? Which side is the bottom? And so I put it on and I called my co-founder, Ben, and I was like, hey, look, we got it. Here it is. And he goes, why do you have it on upside down? And I immediately knew like, okay, that's not going to work. So it has to be completely like symmetrical in a way that people aren't going to get confused and go, which side is well, how do I do it? So I went, nope, we're going to make it as simple and as easy as possible. And that was how we came up with the shape. And we just kind of made it like, all right, let's make sure we're covering majority of people's length, right? And width up to a point where it's not so big and so small. So we tried to find that perfect balance in between the two. And so back to the creating it, then, so I just didn't know, was it defensible? Could I build a big enough brand and put my life into this thing, put my money into this thing, and feel like there was enough here? And then you always wonder, does somebody else have a patent on this? Like, would I be? Because there's always the fear that you create something, and then later you're like, oh crap, somebody's got a patent on this, somebody's got a trademark on this, and then everything you did, you have to completely stop what you're doing, and then you're screwed. So there's always that. There was that fear. And I just kept listening to, there's a lot of podcasts that I was into. I was listening to the My First Million guys, Sean and Sam and the Liquid Death Story and just all those guys. And eventually I just was like, you know what? I felt it in my gut that this was so life-changing. I have to do this. And that's the hardest step for anybody. Anybody that's creating a business, the hardest part is taking the first step and actually starting it. right? And then continually going and keep going. Because most people also don't understand that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. If you were ever an athlete, you know that you go to practice every single day. You put your work in every single day. And many times it's the same practice, same workout every day. And then you get a game on Friday or Saturday. And then you go back to the grind. And it's the same thing. And you do that for weeks and weeks and years in business. And most people fail. Most businesses don't get to where we got. A majority of them don't. Very small percentage of, in fact, I think I saw a stat that like something like 0.1% of businesses that start even make it to 10 million in revenue a year. And we did, we made it well past that and within the second year. And so but that's not normal. And it's really, really hard to do. And you just have to put in the work and keep going. And there's a lot of boring shit that you got to do and a lot of failures you got to learn from. But it was, I think that's the way I'm wired too, though, is I'm the kind of guy who says, no, fuck that. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this. And I knew in my gut. My gut told me that there was something here. And you said it earlier where it's like, I had that gut feeling too, that if I don't do this, somebody else is going to do it. I have to do this. It's changed my life.
Did you start to have the confirmation from the ethereal that you were on the right path, like the serendipities and the things that start to line up? You're like, holy shit, this is really something that's coming up. Oh my God, this is real. Like this. I remember I had a moment with my wife it was like probably a few months ago in building the business that I'm building. And I said to her for the first time in I don't know how long, I don't feel like a lunatic. Like I feel like this is actually something. And it doesn't seem like it's out of nowhere. It seems like it's actually a viable thing. And that's a very different feeling.
Yeah. So there are a couple things that happened to me. One of them is, so when I discovered mount taping, I didn't immediately start the company. It's like every time you tell these stories and you look back, they don't always track 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, right? There was actually a gap in time where I didn't start it because I was actually at my first company. I'd sold it. And so I was vesting the equity out. There was a 2-year vesting window where I had to be at this company. And it was a year in that I realized, oh shit, they don't want me. And I was going to be exiting whether I wanted to or not. Because usually when you get acquired, they don't want you, they just want what you built. And I didn't know that until a year in. And it wasn't until that happened that I realized I needed to find something. And so I had discovered mount taping within that first year, but I hadn't taken the leap because I was still in this other job and I hadn't come to that realization yet because I was also afraid, but I kept waking up every morning because I get mount taping. Like, fuck, there's something here. Fuck, there's something here. Damn it, there's something here. Why haven't I done it yet? It kept tugging at me, right? I just knew it. I knew it in my bone. I knew it in my gut, and I hadn't started it yet. So it actually was a number of months before I finally said, screw it, I'm going to do it. Then, when I finally did it, I contacted my partner, my co-founder, Ben, who he's in charge of all the creative. He's the guy behind the branding of everything that we do. And he was my branding guy in my first company. So he did all the branding and the logos for my first one. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to go to Ben and see, I'm going to hire him and just have him do the branding for it. It's like, hey man, I got this crazy idea for you. You're going to think this is wild. You're going to think this is crazy, but I want to start a mount tape company and I want to call it Hostage Tape. And he went, hold on. Mount tape? Are you for real? I was like, yeah. He goes, dude, I just started getting into mount taping and I've been mount taping at night. And I've been discovering how the mount tape that's out there that I've been trying to use doesn't really work very well. And we both were like, holy shit. And it was
Make that up, dude. You can't make that shit up.
was like the universe had aligned.
100%. Yeah.
And then I was like, this is a sign that we have to absolutely do it. And then I was like, I'm bringing you in. You and I are going to do this together. And then we became partners. So.
Yeah. You mentioned two things. One, you said, early on, you said committing your life to that. And then you said taking the leap. And those are two, in the hustle culture that we see on Instagram, on social media, it's very much, this is your life, the David Goggins, go all in. Do you think that you need to commit in that way on a tangible level, or does it have to be on an energetic level that you are emotionally, mentally, spiritually invested in this thing? Or do you think you need to actually do it? Because to your point, you were still in this other job. Now you still had like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Do you need to make that leap, or do you need to like just make it like mentally?
It depends on what you want out of the business, right? So for example, let's say you've got a full-time job and you just want additional income because you're in your job, you do your thing, maybe you work for the man, whatever, and you're fine with that. But you want some additional income because there's nowhere else you're going to get it. That's probably a different mindset. It's probably a different approach in how you would approach that side hustle, right? For me, I knew that I was transitioning from my first company. I ran it for 16 years, right? So it was a long time of building that thing and then finally selling it and realizing I need to move on. I need to do something new. And I really wanted to get into e-commerce. And so this was like my chance that just like dropped at my foot. Like, wow, I get to do e-commerce finally. This is great because my first one was software. And so for this, I knew that I'm going all in because I was going to build something huge. I wanted to, my mission that I tell people now is we're going to help over 1 million people change their lives with mouth tape. So think about that. 1 million people, if we're helping 1 million people change their lives with mouth tape, that's a pretty big company. And I knew this was going to be big. In fact, when I went to my partner, I create a 2-year P&L for every business that I create. And when I created the 2-year P&L and the roadmap, so I would say anybody out there that's listening to this, you got to know your numbers, man. And one of the best things you can do when you start a business is create a P&L. And you create that, I like doing a 2-year one because then you can fully understand just how things start to affect each other month after month on a long enough time horizon that you can understand how drastic things can be different and change, not just in a 3-month window, but in a longer time. So I created this P&L and I thought to myself, like, okay, well, is this a $10 million business, $100 million business? I mean, yeah, it could definitely be a $100 million business. But then I went, no, I'm going to add a 0 to it. This is a $1 billion business because I knew that you limit yourself. Most people limit themselves just based on what they think and believe. And I knew the TAM, I knew the market size, I knew the problem I was solving. I knew that this was a $1 billion business. So I added a 0 to it. And for me, a business that's going to be a $1 billion business, I'm all in. Everything I do, I have to be. And so my mindset was all in every single way, everything that I do, because if it's not, and I put everything in it. When I left the company, and they had raised the secondary, and so I was able to cash out because it's a private company. So you can't really do much with when it's private equity. There's not much you can do with it until either they raise a secondary or they sell. So I was fortunate enough that they raised a secondary, so I had cash that most people would take that cash, put it in their savings account, pay off their mortgage, do some stuff with it. But I'm the guy that I am. I took all of it and I put it on this, and I put it into this company, into this business, and then I paid my taxes on the amount that was there. I didn't save any of it. I didn't do anything of it because I knew that my investment into this company was going to pay off in a couple of years. This was the investment. Not that money wasn't my investment of I'm good to go. It was, no, I'm taking this, rolling it in to the bigger idea. So I was all in with everything that I had.
How important in that transition or in that realization, because you could, like you said, you could have taken the money, put it in the bank, hey, we're good to go. How important was the idea of purpose behind that and finding your purpose, saying, we're going to help 1 million people through tape, mouth tape? How important was that coming up in you, and how did you navigate kind of aligning that purpose with your mission? And then you said, like, I knew this was a $1 billion business, but the proof of concept is small, right? It's you. It's not in the market to the degree that you've brought it to the market. So yes, there's some kind of outliers there. You're like, all right, it's kind of happening, but they're not doing it to this capacity. So how did purpose align with not having really the proving ground, but knowing instinctually?
Yeah, for me, purpose was everything because it all comes down to authenticity with the brand. So you flip it around and you're a person that is going to buy something. You know, yes, there's things you buy you don't really think twice about, right? But if you're looking at something new, a new product that's introduced, something that maybe you've never really heard of before, right? Most of us buy things on emotion. We don't buy things on logic. Like we'll buy an emotion and then we've validated it later. Like, oh, that was a good decision. Great. Yep, it was great. Like buy with emotion and then verify it with logic later. And so if people were going to buy mouth tape and buy hostage tape from me, I needed to be authentic. And people needed to buy into the story and be inspired by this story. And the only way to do that was to have a true purpose. And what we were trying to achieve was to inspire other men to change their lives with mouth tape. Now, that purpose has evolved over these 3 years. I've very early on, I was trying to figure out like the best way to communicate it. How do I communicate my story? How do I communicate the origin, the purpose, all of it? And it's continuing to evolve, where very early on when I started, I didn't have this very clear mission of I'm going to help 1 million people change their lives with mouth tape. But that wasn't clear early on. I didn't know how to like verbalize it. I was like, well, we're going to be a $1 billion company. Now, what I would say is that's great internally, but most people out there probably don't want to hear that. And so I started to figure out like, what's a better way that I could communicate this to people that really is still the same thing. It's the purpose, but it certainly gets received better by people. And it's that, look, our mission, yes, we're going to be a $1 billion company, but our mission is to help 1 million people change their lives with mouth tape, which was what I always wanted to do. But it's a different way to look at it that says the same thing and is a better way to communicate it, that then I can use it in story. I can story tell with it and I can connect with people. Because that's the other thing, right? Is you can't sell if you can't like relate to people. Like, people are going to look at your product. They're going to look at you. And if you're not telling a story that's relatable, then they just don't care. They're going to move on to the next person, right? And so that's something I've also been working into is how do I tell this story, this founder story, continue to tell the relatable aspects to it? Because there's aspects of my founder story, like I mentioned it earlier, where my wife and I actually went through a divorce. Okay, we went through a divorce, and then we got back together. That's part of that founding story, and it's part of I've told that story many times on the web and in many podcasts, but I've evolved that story to be my founder story is less about getting divorced and then back together with my wife again, because that's not really relatable, right? And being a good storyteller in your brand, in your business, is being relatable. And so I've learned and evolved that purpose to be more relatable. So I pull out the more relatable pieces of the story, right? So that people can then relate to, oh, okay, what's relatable about that is I snored so bad, pushed my wife out of the bedroom for years. I discovered mouth taping. Now I don't snore anymore. And now my wife and I sleep in the same bed again. Hugely changed my life, changed her life, changed my kids' lives, right? So, yeah.
So you mentioned the $1 billion business, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, where that is the expression in the 3D tangible vanity world, right? Like the numerical return on the energetic input and the alignment piece that is huge, and you can't always put a value on that. You can't always express that. I remember the first time I did a cold plunge. And afterwards, I was talking to the facilitator. I was like, I don't know, what I'm going after, but I do, and it's that. And whatever that feeling is, that's where I'm going. I've come to call it the golden thread, right? The thing that pulls you to be the best version of yourself. That all the noise can be chattering, but you are just following this golden piece of yarn that pulls you forward. And it's hard to kind of articulate that in a sense. You're expressing like, we're gonna be $1 billion company. It's like, that's great, but what is that doing for people? How is that
Right.
pulling you forward outside of just we're $1 billion company?
Yeah, exactly. And that took me 2 years to figure out. I didn't know the right way to say it. So, because it was like, yeah, we're going to be $1 billion company. And it certainly sounds cool, sounds interesting to some people. But for most people, like, they don't care about that. They just care about, well, what is this doing for me? What's the purpose? And so, yeah, I mean, I would encourage anybody else listening to this is, if you're building something, you're building a business. Yeah, internally you can think about it that way, but then maybe think about how you can communicate that purpose in a way that resonates with people, right? And so that's the best way that and this is within the last year that I finally figured out this is how I can say this, because we tend to have these large amounts of people who they jump on, they start mouth taping, and they want to tell everybody about it, which is awesome. It's amazing. And so we have what we call the hostage tape army, with this army of people that's continually getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so we just related it to like, okay, great, awesome. Let's relate it to, we've got all these people that we're helping, right, change their lives. This army of people that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So
There's a lot of modalities out there. There's breath work. There's cold plunges. You name it, people are doing it there these days.
yeah,
Something like this is so simple, but it's so effective, right? And I've done a ton of breath work. I'm getting my certification and breath work. So you do conceptually understand the importance of and the power of properly breathing, and then breathing with intention and breathing with focus, and how that all changes. And then even like I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but even in the moments where I'm like, I'll have to reset myself or go back to your nose. And it does, it creates this kind of baseline experience. How is that affecting how is it affecting the sleep aspect of things, of going through the nose versus the huffing and puffing of the mouth?
yeah. So I'll try not to be too like medical with it, but so for the audience out there, everybody listening, so in its simplest form, when you breathe through your nose, you're getting more oxygen. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because most people are like, wait a minute, I'm getting more air through my mouth. Like that doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't make sense. But it comes down to, there's this principle in our body. It's called the Bohr effect. But what it basically says is like, look, when you breathe, you're getting oxygen, and then you're getting this release of CO2. And so the more CO2 that we actually have in our body, the better our body can use the oxygen. And so that is the problem, is that when we breathe through our mouth, we're exhaling more CO2, right? We're venting more CO2. So then we have less CO2 in our body for our body to actually use it and transfer the oxygen, because there's a 1-for-1 exchange, right? O2 oxygen comes in, CO2 goes out. And if there's no CO2 in there, then the oxygen can't get distributed throughout the body. And so when we breathe through our nose, it slows that down. And so now I can get more oxygen distributed out through the body. That's like one of the most simple ways to think about it. You're just getting more oxygen in your body, and you're getting, more energy and all of that. That's allowing your body to do the things it needs to do when you're trying to recover throughout the night. Another thing is that when you breathe through your nose, you're filtering the air too, right? You're filtering the air, you're pulling out all the crap, the dirt, the viruses, the allergens, right? And all that stuff. You're also warming the air. And by warming the air and humidifying the air through the nose, it also then makes that way more efficient to be able to pull in and use oxygen throughout the body. Okay. Another one is that you're triggering the release of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator, opens up the blood vessels and helps blood flow and get that oxygen then again moving throughout the body. And another one too is that, when you breathe through your nose, nitric oxide gets released. It's calming. And when you breathe through your nose, your body relaxes and it's in a good state. Whereas when you breathe through your mouth, your body almost goes into a fight or flight state, right? Of like, then you're stressed, right? So you breathe through your mouth, your body's in a stressed state and you're anxious. And that's just not healthy to always be in a anxious, stress state when you're sleeping, right? And then one of the final pieces that's interesting is not necessarily related to sleep, but it protects your teeth. So when you breathe through your mouth, in fact, when you go to the dentist, most dentists, especially holistic dentists and more new age dentists, they can spot mouth breathers right away. They go in there and they're looking around and they know you're a mouth breather. Because when you mouth breathe, you evaporate all the saliva, the good bacteria. And that saliva and good bacteria, you basically have a microbiome in your mouth that protects your teeth and protects your enamel. And so when that all goes away, bad bacteria forms from mouth breathing that eats away at the enamel, creates super gnarly morning breath, right? All sorts of crazy things, just really bad oral hygiene. And that, again, doesn't really affect sleep, but it hugely affects, other aspects of your life, right?
So it's the morning.
Totally. Like, waking up to a husband who's got gnarly ass friggin' dragon breath because he's been mouth breathing all night. Not good.
What age? So my kids, I would imagine, waking up in the morning, they're both like this. And my son is 6, my daughter's 10. What age would you introduce something like this?
So if your kids are mouth breathing, you want to nip that in the bud right away, right now. And there's no reason. Now, again, I'm not a doctor, but there's no reason why you can't put mouth tape on your kids. It's up to you. It's your decision.
Yeah,
but don't feel weird about putting mouth tape on your kids. It's not like you're going to suffocate you, especially your kids at that young of an age where, guys like us, we've had our nose broken a few times. Maybe we've got deviated septums and maybe we don't breathe so good because there's a blockage.
Yeah.
But young kids, there's nothing. There's probably nothing going on there that would cause them not to be able to breathe. So believe it or not, this is actually really fascinating that you brought that up. So I was doing a podcast with one of the leading airway surgeons down in Houston, Texas, Dr. Elfie. And I said, Dr. Elfie, why do you think so many people have this issue of mouth breathing? Why is it now suddenly an epidemic with people? And his response was, of course, there's the processed foods. We're not chewing, we're not using our jaws and doing all that like we used to. So the introduction of processed foods has certainly helped make that worse. But he said breastfeeding. So the belief is that the we stopped breastfeeding kids to the extent like we used to when formula was invented. This was in like the 70s. And I fit right into that. And a lot of the kids nowadays, it's even worse, right? I mean, if I remember, I don't know that my wife breastfed that long. I think we shoved formula into our kids' mouths because that's just kind of what you're taught and what you see, and you just believe it's normal. So the idea is that
shape or form, like it's supplemental, or there's issues with breastfeeding, so it's more common than it ever was, for sure.
Oh, totally, yeah. And so the belief is that when a child is breastfeeding, they're working their mouth, their nose, they're working the foundation of how to properly breathe and use their mouth and their nose. They're setting a good foundation of it. Whereas when they don't breastfeed and then you give them a bottle, then they're not working and creating a foundation of nasal breathing. And then it creates this pattern that then starts to create bad habits, which then creates poor facial development, poor jaw development, and then you start getting recessed jaws, and then mouths drop open, and then they're just doesn't work like it should, right? So I would suggest start mouth taping them for sure. You could start small with them. They probably don't need like a ridiculously crazy amount, but you probably start small.
Just wrap it around their head.
Hey, kids.
Go to
So,
bed.
but definitely you want to nip that one in the bud for sure with kids, because what happens with kids is, so kids, their skulls, they're still forming up until in their 20s. It's not until, I don't know the exact age, but it's somewhere in your 20s where then your skull finally stops growing and it's set. So if they're breathing with their mouth open way too much, then what happens is, there's tons of pictures out there you can find of like young kids who are mouth breathers and what they used to look like and all that, where their jaws continually start to form and get recessed, and then they develop all these just airway breathing issues, asthma. Their face looks long, and their jaw gets even more recessed. Their teeth are awful, and it's solved just by simply getting their mouth shut, breathing through their nose, and then their jaw starts to form. Right, their skull starts to form in a completely different, more normal way that you'd be amazed. Like, go look for it. Go Google it, man, and look at the pictures of some of these kids where they've done studies on the difference of kids that were mouth breathing versus not. So it's wild.
Welcome to Agora Social Club, the Westchester's hub for guys to gather, connect, and unwind. In the last 6 years, I've been facilitating a men's group called the Council of Dudes. And within that 6 years, I realized that guys need a place where they can get together, connect, and build community. A place that's not the gym, that's not jiu-jitsu, that's not the bar, but a place where guys can come with no ego and grow and develop together. So here we have our chess table. We're going to be having monthly chess lessons and our Take a Book, Leave a Book library. Some of these I've read, some of these I haven't. Quantum physics to personal development to fiction. We also have our record player area. In the last few years, I've become very obsessed with jazz music. And if you don't know how to play vinyl, no big deal. It hooks up to your phone via Bluetooth. We have artwork from California to local artists. We have these small little work tables, so if you want to hang on the couch and get some work done, you can just come pop them open. And we also have our little workspace here with quotes from Muhammad Ali, Albert Einstein, Theodore Roosevelt. We also have our coffee bar, small fridge, and more quotes and artwork over the wall. Head on over to agorasocialclub.com, sign up for our free 7-day trial, and with that, you will get a key fob. Scan your key fob, and you have access to this space from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week. So if you're a guy in the Westchester area and you're looking to gather, connect, and unwind with like-minded men, head on over to agorasocialclub.com.
It's amazing because when you watch children breathe, right, at a very young age, they breathe perfectly, right? Their lungs, the way they breathe, and then they get introduced into school and sitting all day, and then all of a sudden they do become laborious breathers, and they're just kind of blobby breathers, right? It becomes sloppy. We become like these lazy, sloppy breathers, and until it's brought to your attention, you don't really realize the type of breathing you're doing, and again, doing breath work and going through that process, you realize, again, the impact that on a psychedelic level breath work has but then also just in breathing in general, whether it be working out, running, like you said, you weren't trained or taught like, hey, you're huffing and puffing the field, like slow down, go through your nose. It's going to feel a little bit harder for sure at first, but once you get that cadence down, it changes your entire mental capacity.
Dude, what blows my mind is I love going to New York City in the summer. I live in Minnesota, and so I'll take my family to New York in the summer. I love running in Central Park, and I'm a big people watcher. So I love running, doing my run, and then I'll sit at a bench in park, and I just like to watch people. It blows me away the amount of people who are just running, and we're not talking like hardcore like hit sprints here, right? Not like we're doing 40-yard dashes and like we're really exerting a lot of energy. Just normal jogging, and the amount of people who are huffing and puffing with their mouth open. Every single person you sit and you watch run by is doing it, and it's amazing how you feel once you teach yourself to shut your mouth, breathe through your nose, learn the cadence of breathing in and out of your nose when you're running, and fighting through that air hunger that you have of wanting to feel like you got to open your mouth when you really don't. You fight through it, and then all of a sudden, the energy opens up, and you've got so much more energy just because you kept your mouth shut and you're breathing through your nose. You can actually power through the run and perform so much better. So,
Yeah, you get energy and clarity, I think, as well. There's definitely a sense of like calm and clarity that comes when because you're in this fight or flight mode where you're just kind of huffing and puffing, and you think that you're, optimizing the oxygen that you're taking in, but in reality, it's like it's not refined. It's kind of just like it's kind of sloppy breathing. Have you done any research? I'm sure you have in regard to people training with their mouth tape.
so we actually haven't done any research on it, believe it or not. The only kind of things I could speak to are just anecdotal and just what people say, reviews from the thousands and thousands of people who have reviewed the product or people we've talked to. But it's funny, the amount of people who will wear mouth tape while they train continues to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I know it sounds dumb. People think, why would you go for a run and train with mouth tape on? That just sounds so stupid. Just keep your mouth shut. But I challenge anybody to go for a run, do a workout, do something with mouth tape on, and you will realize how much you're actually opening your mouth. And you don't realize it because you put tape on it, and then you truly realize like what it's like to use your nose when you go on the run, or if you're in the gym and you're doing your workout. So
yeah, you desperately want that air. I'm curious to try to do some jujitsu with my mouth tape. I'm so curious to see how that would go.
that'd be hard, but
Yeah, I might try it. I'm gonna try it maybe on Saturday. I'll try it Saturday morning. I'll tape my mouth and I'll get back to you on how it goes, because again, the times where I'm breathing through my mouth, I have to catch myself and recalibrate and say, all right, go back to your nose. Mouth it's not serving right now, because it does. And then it spirals. It starts to get even worse and worse and worse. Where when I kind of realize that and I go back to the nose, it feels significantly better. I definitely have this sense of clarity that comes over me.
but we got a lot of guys like you who they do that sport and they discover Haas's tape and absolutely love it because like you guys understand that better than most people. I don't know if it's because it's taught, if you guys are taught it in your training, but we definitely have a lot of guys in that martial arts, realm who understand it way better than most people do.
I think you also just realized how, again, it's a little bit of an unconventional sport, so you probably have a very unconventional approach to things, and you're kind of, seemingly for me, you're just more open to trying things and exploring these things that give you the slightest bit of advantage. And you're also very often being suffocated. So that thought of your mouth being like, people will literally put their gi over your mouth to prevent you from breathing. So the idea of being suffocated or strangled doesn't really that feeling of like I'm gonna die. It kind of goes very quickly.
Yeah. Or you listen to Joe Rogan and you've heard him talk about us.
Exactly. Question. So what are people? I mean, obviously, there's how many people have you helped with mouth tape thus far? Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, I want to say the numbers. It's somewhere between 150 to 200,000. So when I say there's more people have bought it, but on a regular, recurring basis, it's somewhere between 150 to 200,000 people regularly use hostage tape.
And what type of people are they? Are they that guy that's just trying to figure it out and what's going on in my life, and I'm just trying to improve in every little tiny way, 1% better every day? Or
You'd be surprised. Like if you go to the website and you click on the reviews and you just look through the pictures, dude, you see everybody, all walks of life. It honestly doesn't, you don't just see guys like us who are middle-aged, healthy guys who work out all the time. You'd think those are the guys who use the product, because this is certainly a product where majority of people don't know about it and probably wouldn't do it. And so it's those early adopters that do it. So you'd think guys like us would be early adopters. But man, there's all sorts of women, men, young, old. Some people are not in the greatest shape. Some people are in amazing shape. Man, it's everybody. And it just goes to show you that at the end of the day, we're solving a problem, a core problem that so many people have. And again, I would tell that to everybody out there. If you're trying to start a business, if you're trying to build something, man, start with a problem. Find a problem that you can solve in your daily lives and then build a business around that. That's one of the best things that you can do. But that's it, man. It's just everybody's got this problem. It's not just guys like you and me that have the problem. It's Cindy down the street who's a 40-year-old mom that's not getting great sleep. It's, Jack, the 60-year-old who maybe there's no kids in the house, but doesn't get great sleep. It's Johnny, the 18-year-old kid who didn't breastfeed and as a result is a huge mouth breather and doesn't get very good sleep. It's a wide range of people, man.
And the other part of it is that you could get great sleep, but this just might enhance it even better. Like I'm a pretty good sleeper, and the time that I have used hostage tape in the past, there was an increase to like you wake up and you do like, oh, this is like a little bit of a different feeling. And then obviously you check the Whoop and you check your recovery and how well you slept and all that and all the barometers, and it reflects that. And it might just be a one-off thing, but if you do it on a consistent basis, like anything else, then that's going to improve, and that 1% becomes 2%, and then obviously there's a bigger impact on that in the long run.
Yeah, well, I would say this. It comes down to, do you mouth breathe or not, period. If you might be somebody where maybe you don't mouth breathe, because there's a lot of guys who they don't mouth breathe, right, when they sleep. And if you don't mouth breathe, then you don't need mouth tape, period. You're breathing through your nose the way you should be when you sleep. But for the people who are mouth breathing, you 100% should be breathing through your nose when you sleep, and mouth tape might be the solution for you, assuming you don't have any major blockage in your nose and you can breathe through your nose, and mouth taping then, is perfectly good for you. So
you said one thing that I think is key is solving a problem. And so often the problem that you have to solve is really the problem that you're interfacing with, because it is personal, because it is part of your journey, it's part of your experience, and you could speak on it in a way that's super relatable. So to your point, if you are looking to start something, if you're looking to go into a business, be an entrepreneur, it is focusing on yourself in some way and be like, what am I struggling with? What are things that are affecting my everyday life? How can I make my life better? And then now putting that out in the world and kind of seeing how the feedback is.
yeah, that's one of the best ways. I mean, you talked about purpose earlier, right? Like, there's no better purpose than solving a problem that you face on a daily basis. And then now you have a purpose because you're solving your problem. And then you might know, oh my gosh, this is a problem that all of these other people have too. And now you can speak to that. You're authentic. You can authentically communicate this message to people, and they're going to believe you, relate to you, and probably buy your product if it's a great product.
What is one thing that you look back on and think that you would have changed or modified to maybe be in a better position now?
Well, so we grew a lot. I mean, we went from 0 to 8 figures in 2 years. Pretty rare.
What do you attribute that to?
I attribute it to, I think, the brand. Like, we picked the most polarizing, crazy brand that you can imagine. So we got attention. And it's my belief that attention is the currency in this day and age. You have to be able to get through all the noise, because everybody can now create a business on Shopify and start posting on Instagram and TikTok and everywhere. But are you interesting enough that you're going to get somebody's attention? And then you can start building something from there. So it was that we were getting people's attention, and we were then leveraging that attention and amplifying it with Facebook, Facebook and Instagram ads. And so I think it was that, and paired with my ability. I'm one of those small few people who can take a crazy idea, build it, operate, execute it, and make it is what it is. I have, extreme confidence in my ability to be able to do that. And I was lucky and fortunate enough that it paid off and it actually worked, because there's plenty of great people who fail. I very easily could have failed, but I think the timing was right. The brand was right. There was just all these really weird things that just kind of happened, and it just worked. And my story was so authentic that it just resonated, and it just all kind of happened, man. And it was just perfect product market fit at the right time.
So wait, go back to you said you grew very quickly in the first 2 years,
right? So we grew so quickly that you inevitably always get to a point where you go, okay, now what? Right? How do I diversify? So from a marketing perspective, there's channels that you're focusing on, that you're trying to market to. And then you have to think like, okay, do I need to diversify and add on additional marketing channels to continue to grow and bring in new customers? And I think my error, if I could go back and change it, was I diversified into some marketing channels I shouldn't have done. So
we're worse than at the time.
No, they came to us. I mean, because that's what happens. So maybe the lesson here is that learn to say no way more than say yes. Because when you find lightning in a bottle, then everything starts to become really easy, and then everybody's attracted to you. So then all of a sudden, everybody started coming to us and wanted to work with us. And when you've got all of these sports teams and leagues and high-level organizations and people coming to you, you can't help but feel like, holy crap, this is amazing. Yeah, I want to work with you. I want to work with you. I want to work with you. But you then have to go, wait a minute. Does it make sense, though? Am I really, truly going to get the return that we need to go into this partnership with this league, this group, this team, or person? And we're a direct-to-consumer product for with direct response marketing. The marketing we put out gets response. And so I expanded and diversified into marketing that was not really direct response. It was more awareness based. And we just weren't big enough. I don't think we were big enough to get to that point yet. So we went into some partnerships that we shouldn't have, that I regret, and I would go back and not do it. But look, you got to make the mistake. You got to learn from it. So then you can adapt, improve, and get through it. Because I'm a big believer that you have to go through failures. You have to go through this kind of stuff to make you who you are, to prove to the universe that you can level up and become the business, the company, the person you're supposed to be. Right. So I look at that and I go, okay, the universe threw us something there because we're about to level up. And if I can't navigate us through it and past it, then it wasn't meant to be and we're just not good enough. But if I can get past it, then that's me telling the universe that we're good enough, we can handle it, and we're ready to level up. Because if I'm going to be here, I have to be able to handle all of these other situations. Because if I can't, then I'm never going to be here.
That didn't sound. Interesting. That's, I say this very often. The next version of you requires the next version of you, right? And it's like the things that you do on the everyday that's going to ultimately lead you to being that version of you that you see, right? But in that delta space, when you're still the person you currently are and you're not quite the person you see yourself being, that is very hard to navigate. And seeing those opportunities, they may be coming and you're like, I get to your point. Yes, 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 yes. But at the same time, there is some power in thing of the no, because when you get to that point of clearing that delta space, you are now in a position where you're going to have to say no. And unless you know how to say no, you're going to always be kind of living in that limbo space and then seeing those opportunities as they present themselves and having them really be authentic to you.
You almost have to make the mistake in order to truly understand it and truly understand when to say no and why to say no. So it's almost like I can't tell any other founder out there, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. Because sometimes you just have to go through it. You got to take your lumps. You got to make the mistake to truly go, okay, I get it. Now I know how I can navigate and do this because of that.
It's internalized. It's experienced internalized. And you could fill it out on the bubble answer like, see, don't do that shit. And then all of a sudden it comes and you still do it, right? But until you internalize it and actually know it and it's part of who you are, it's a totally different experience.
It's also learning to, as men, like take our ego out of it. Because, some of these partnerships, they come to you and your ego is like, yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I feel amazing. But then you got to go, no, dude, take your ego out of it. As amazing as it is to like go spend time with those people, or go be there and do those things, it doesn't make sense. It's not good for where you need to get to. It's not going to help you get to where you need to be yet. Like that can come later. You have to put in that work to get to that point, because then that stuff can come later.
What do you do to keep your ego at bay?
Oh boy. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know what I do. I think I just do a lot of self work. Like I get up like 5:30 every day. I do I do sauna, I do cold plunge, I do a run, a workout, red light therapy. I meditate. I do all these things every morning. And if I don't do those things, then I don't feel in alignment. And I don't feel like I'm good. And so, as weird as that says, I think that helps me navigate any sort of ego issue where then I can take a step back and go, okay, dude, come on, let's be real here. This doesn't make sense because I'm in a good headspace to be able to critically look at things and address my ego, right? Or I made this mistake. Now I know, all right, I'm not going to let my ego get in the way because I've already made that mistake. So taking care of myself helps me, I think, maybe keep my ego in check.
Yeah, it's an internal it's an internal conversation, and a lot of those internal conversations come up, whether it be in a sauna or a cold plunge or on a run.
You'd be amazed how many like sauna thoughts I have, right? Like the amount of ideas I'll get just sitting in the sauna and like, oh, it's wild. It's crazy how I would tell anybody out there that sometimes you just need to give yourself time to think. You need to give yourself time for the mind to wander. And I think for me, it's the sauna. It's like she'll just come to me. So
the muse makes itself present. Yeah, and listen, meditating, obviously, I'm a huge proponent of sensory deprivation. One of my favorite quotes is all humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And sitting in that sensory deprivation tank, that first 20 minutes is the monkey mind, right? The to-do list. I gotta go do this and pick up the kids and Taco Tuesday and all this shit. And then all of a sudden that dust settles and all the real stuff starts to kind of percolate and come to the surface. And then you get to interface with yourself in a totally different way. And that is so much of where those ideas come from and where it all generates from, where you start to go, you start to interface with yourself and have these conversations and kind of put yourself in those checks and balances.
I'll tell you, that just reminded me. I think one of the biggest challenges that I have, and I think it's just because of the way that I'm wired. There's certain types of people that are wired this way, and I think there's this famous TikTok clip of a football coach, a college football coach, was saying this to his team, but it's the idea that I'm always wondering, shit, what am I not doing that I need to be doing? I feel like there's always something I need to be doing and I'm not, right? And it's like, it's some quote where it's like winners always worry about what they're not doing, what they need to keep doing, right? Whereas like losers don't think about it or something. I don't know the quote, but I feel like that, where I'm always wondering, I'm not doing enough. I always feel like I'm not doing enough. What else should I be doing? And so I have a hard time stopping and being still and thinking that sometimes it's okay just to do nothing. And because I always feel like I have to stay ahead. There's people chasing me. Anybody can take this away from me. I mean, that's probably the athlete in me, right? Like being a quarterback my entire life, there was always a guy behind you who's there to take your job. And so you're always on your toes, working, trying to do something, trying to get better every single day. And I just always felt that way. And I just don't know how to turn that off.
Yeah, and that's tough, man, because that's a trap in its own right? That's your ego in its own right, still making itself known. Because again, I'm very similar in the sense that I'm never doing enough, and I do a lot. And if you had asked me, hey, no, it's not enough. It's never enough, and that's an intrinsic problem. There's something there that I need to interface on a deeper level, in my opinion, that I've yet to do. Because when is it enough? When you're a $1 billion company, when you've helped a million, because you said it, like you get to that point, you go, what's next? And then if you keep on moving those goalposts, then what's next is always going to be always elusive.
So I've been listening to Sam Parr's got a great new podcast out. I think it's called Money Wise. And it sounds kind of funny that I'm listening to this, but what he has on that podcast is he has a lot of people who have exited and made a lot of money. And they talk about that journey. And what's funny about what you just said is I'm thinking about that now in anticipation that I'm going to hit a point where we probably sell the business for a lot of money. And inevitably, there comes that time in every founder who sells their business for a lot of money. And everybody always thinks that you're building for that, to have that big exit, to get that money. But then once you do it, you go, oh shit, now what? What's next? And then you feel a giant sense of loss, and then you've lost your purpose. And so I'm always thinking about that too, where it's like, this business gives me purpose as a man. I've got my purpose. I know exactly what I'm doing, where I'm going, and what I'm building towards. But I also know there's going to be a day where I'm going to lose this purpose. And then what? And so I know for me, I always need to have something I'm building. I want to be building something until the day I'm dead. 95 years old, however old I make it. I don't ever want to be the guy that sells my company and sits on a beach somewhere. I'm going to need to be building, right? Always having that purpose.
Yeah, we're sold this illusion that is the goal, right? To make the money, retire. My mom retired a few years ago. She's 74 years old, and she called me like, "What do I want to do with my life?" And I was like, "You're thinking about that now? Like, what the fuck are you doing for like 30, 40 years? Like, God bless you, you've been busting your ass." But yeah, we get sold this idea that the whole purpose is retirement. And how many times do you hear the story of the person who retired to get sick or get in, like, their body start to break down because they're not in that day-to-day grind. And it seems like that's not what we should be doing. But when you're in purpose and you are aligned, that grind is way more manageable. It's way more understanding, and it's rooted in purpose. So therefore it doesn't, it's the old expression, love what you do, you never work a day in your life. It's the opposite. You work every day of your life, but it doesn't feel like work. And when you're in that grind of a 9 to 5 and you're clocking in and clocking out, that becomes a totally different type of thing.
Yeah, I think about that with this sounds kind of funny, my kids. So you have kids, you've got younger kids, but my son is 15 in high school. I coach his baseball team. Probably one of my most loved things that I do is I get to coach the baseball team. And then my daughter is 13. And every week I'll have a thought of, oh, wow, in X amount of more years or X amount of more summers, they're not going to be here anymore. Then what? What am I going to do? I don't get to coach baseball anymore. My son's not here to be able to go out and throw the ball around. What am I going to do? A little bit of a diversion from business.
No, not at all. No, but it's
similar. Like,
yeah, it's a similar thing where like there's these chapters in our lives that close and these books close. I was thinking about the other day, the same thing. I was just, I facilitated a men's group, and a big part of that, we have guys who are empty nesters and their kids are coming home from college and they're like, this is going to disrupt my entire life. And it's your kid. And that's a really hard emotional thing to like navigate. And it's no different than having the idea like my daughter's 10, but the world is starting to rear its ugly head, and it's comparison. This one does this and that one does that. And you start to see the world start to have its impact on them. And that changes your relationship with the world and your relationship with them. And when you root yourself in, because that's a purpose too, right? Being a dad is a purpose. And it's hard because it is one that is no different than that retirement. It's going to have its end date, and you don't know when that end date is.
Yeah, I think it's because I look at my dad. My dad he's almost 80, my mom, they're still together. They're still both alive. And I'm like, so I'll project myself to my dad and go, oh my God, like, what does he do? Like, he golfs all day. But I'll put myself in his shoes and think, what is he doing all day? How is he handling it? Because I know he and I are wired almost identically. And so, fascinating.
Yeah, if I operate like my parents at this age, I'll be cleaning my house all day. So, but mom, yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough to have these realizations, but it's also super important because again, it allows you to reverse engineer it and gives you the opportunity to be present in the company that you're building and helping so many people in the parenting, in the baseball. It gives you the ability to be present. And there's no better time to be than present, right? Because we could project all these things, but you and I both know that could be all taken away from any of us at any given moment.
Well, that's actually a great point, and maybe what all of it was alluding to, and maybe that's why I keep thinking about it, is maybe it's a reminder to me is I need to be more present, because I think as an entrepreneur, somebody like me in my shoes, I'm so responsible for so many things that I don't feel present, because you're pulled in a million directions. You're running a large company, you're dealing with all your employees, and you've got your family, your kids, the baseball, like all this stuff. And it's almost maybe life, maybe the universe, is continually telling me, like, you need to be more present, because before you realize it, everything that you love right now is going to be gone. So,
yeah, and listen, it is hard. It's you answering the emails. I have a business partner. He's in England. We're chatting. 4 a.m. at my time. It's all over the place. But yeah, the being the present thing, man. It's so important, and doing those things to allow yourself to be present, like the meditating, like the working out. And people perceive that as selfish and all the cultural narratives, but
not
it's
selfish.
so important. It's not. It's really not.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody out there that's listening to this, watching this, man, like, it's not selfish, and you have to prioritize yourself. And I think women have the biggest, like, my wife struggled with this a ton, in like her 30s. But anybody out there, man, you have to put yourself first and take care of you. It's the old adage of, like, when you're on an airplane, right? You got to put the mask on so you can take care of everybody else.
But
So-
men, how often do we no, I would never do that. I'd put it on my kids first. It's like, no, stupid, on yourself. Yeah, but we have that approach of, like, do it to them. Like, again, the ego comes up, but it's so true. Like, you got it. You, like, what better? I wake up very early, go work out, because it's just what my schedule allows me to do. And I would tell my wife, it's so important for my kids to see me come home at 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning after working out, because it's setting a precedent for them. Like, they're seeing me take care of myself, and then they're able to go, oh, this is important shit.
That's a great point. Yeah. There was, I saw a podcast of the day where a guy was talking about that. He's like, look, you can't sit and tell your kids what to do, how to do it all the time, because they have to see it. You have to be the example. And, to what you're saying, that's something I try to do. I try to be the example, not because I'm consciously saying I need to be an example of them. That's just me. I'm just doing all of those things because I know I need to do them. But I also know that by me doing these things, I'm setting an example that they need to see. And I also know that there's other areas of my life that I need to do a better job of, to be an example of, because they're watching.
Yeah, and it's no different than the byproduct of being a $1 billion company and helping 1 million people, right? Like, the byproduct of you showing up for yourself is them getting an opportunity to realize what's important, and you doing the work, and it goes, oh, okay, that's what it takes to be successful. That's what it takes to have a $1 billion company, and that's the hardest thing to do, because people in the outside world, and my wife struggles with it too, and I tell her all the time, like, don't feel bad about it. Like, go do the thing. But I think it is a harder leap in women's minds, for whatever reason, to kind of be selfish.
I think every wife goes through that, of putting the kids first. I think that happens in every marriage, dude. Every wife puts their kids first, and then that problem happens in every marriage, right? The wife puts the kids first, and then you get put down at the bottom of the list, and any wives listening, man, don't do that. Put yourself first, go to the gym, go to the sauna, do what you need to do. And then it's your husband, and then it's your kids. Just like in my life, the order is me, then it's my wife, then it's my kids, because the kids need to see that, right? Kids need to see that they're not the most important thing. It's good for them. It's good for them to know that they're not the top of the world for you, that mom or dad comes first before them.
Yeah. And that's tough. I mean, it's tough when you have them. You want to make their life easy, right? But you also have to teach lessons. And then, like, my daughter left her lunchbox at home today, and I was like, there was a point where like, I'm just gonna leave it, and she's gonna eat school lunch and tough shit. And then she calls me and like, Dad, can you drop off my lunch? I'm like, all right, because again, there's a lesson there too that says I'm here for you when you need me. When you're 16 and you're at the party and you want to get out of there, I'm going to be there and you can call me, right? So there are two lessons there, and it's a matter of which one kind of takes precedence to teach.
It's funny. It's funny you bring up that example because I think that's happened to us too, where I'm not bringing it to her. She's going to learn.
Yeah.
Like, I've done that. And then my wife would be like, oh, no. And then she'll bring it to him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. Like, they got to learn, because then the moment that happens, and it happens once or twice, then they'll never do it again.
You would hope not, but you know what? They're kids, and that's the innocence of it. Dude, thank you so much for doing this. This is an amazing conversation. I really appreciate it. I love what you're doing. I will have hostage tape in my house. All that other shit's going out the window for the wife and for myself. Where can people find out more? Where can they connect with you? Where can they get hostage tape?
Yeah, you got it, man. So you can go to hostagetape.com and you can get some amazing bundles there. And you can go to on social at hostage tape. We're on all the socials. And then if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff at Alex Neist.
Excellent, dude. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is awesome.
Awesome, man. Hey, don't let bad sleep hold you hostage, folks.